Alright, what is up, guys? I last made a video talking about the introduction of Genesis format, and since then I've played a lot of Genesis format and have a lot of thoughts to share about what the first month of the format has looked like, what were some of the decks that were playable, and how I feel about the balancing of the format as a whole, and then just yesterday on the 27th at the time of recording this, it was just yesterday, they've updated the points list quite significantly, and I wanted to share my thoughts on that as every other person that makes Yu-Gi-Oh content under the sun has already done. And first things first, I think it goes without saying that I am feeling more positive about the game as a whole than I have in a while, and I think most people are sharing this sentiment, where Konami is doing things that are just unprecedented for them to do. And I really want to put this into perspective for you guys, because a lot of content creators talk about this in a way that's sort of taken for granted or presupposed, where they talk about how Konami is historically terrible at communicating their intent to the player base. And this is true, but you really wouldn't know the nuances of that and unless you've been playing the game for a long time. So for example, the reason why the ban lists are not the same between the OCG and the TCG goes all the way back to 2012, and they used to be the same back then until a bunch of TCG exclusive cards, namely the wind-ups, caused a ban list that was so upsetting. It hit a bunch of Tengu Plant cards that weren't relevant to the current format at all and didn't even touch the wind-up hand loop, and so the game saw a big drop off of players around that format. That format was widely considered to be unfun, and they communicated. There was like a ban list around that time where they actually released a blog and talked about the design decisions around the ban list. But since then, we've gotten no communication about what is the philosophy behind the ban list, what are the decisions that they make. They are terrible at communicating when the ban list will be released. There used to be specific dates that a new list would come out, and they've retracted that. Now it's kind of whenever. And so we've kind of gotten used to terrible communication and transparency from them over the years. But if you look at this year in particular, so Genesis being the first thing, the project of Genesis in and of itself is a specifically TCG thing. This is not coming from the top brass at Konami in Japan. This is specifically a TCG thing. And so it seems like they have autonomy to do whatever they want with it, including run a blog where they are incredibly transparent about the design sensibilities behind this format. And that's a level of communication that we have not seen before. They are incredibly transparent about why the cards are at specific point values that they're at, what their general philosophy is, and play patterns that they consider to be unfun and they don't want to continue to exist, such as alt wins and FTKs and stuff like that. And we've gotten numerous updates over the course of October, basically following up on that. So Genesis as a whole is a unprecedented level of communication from them. The emergency ban list. The emergency ban list was crazy for Constructed Advanced, where we basically had a really, really good competitive format in Justice Hunters format in the middle of the summer. And then the post-Worlds ban list comes out, and they hit a bunch of relevant cards, like in the Canine Vanquish Soul deck. And then people start playing different strategies, which coincidentally revolve around a lot of lingering floodgates and unfun play patterns, which resulted in the finals of one of the recent tournaments being a game in which the players that playing the final match played exactly one turn per game. So there were 3 turns played across an entire match, which made for an incredibly unfun game to play and an unfun game to watch, and was frankly an embarrassment for them. So they enacted an emergency ban list for the first time in what feels like a decade, and hit all of these ignorant floodgates and lingering floodgates that we just didn't want to see in the game anymore. They did a fantastic, fantastic, fantastic job about that. And then the other thing they've done that was awesome is we just got the release of the. We saw what the contents are going to be inside the Legendary 5Ds decks, and they are reprinting every Mulch Army in there at common. And in addition to all bunch of other older staple hand traps like Effect Veiler, Ghost Ogre, Ash, Cross-Eyed Designator, and Droplet are also all going to be there in common, in some cases in multiple copies. One box of this thing gets you a playset of Ash and Imperm and stuff like that, meaning that this is the just they've completely salvaged this product, because I knew a lot of people were not excited about this product. They announced several months back when it was first revealed that it was going to include Mulch Army Meowls, which is the one Mulch Army that has not had a reprint yet, but it's also the Mulch Army that sees the least amount of play. So people were like, oh my god, I can't believe I have to blow $30 on a CL product with one good reprint in it, and the rest of the cards are gonna be garbage. And that was the sentiment among the competitive player base. I was really looking forward to the product, obviously, as a diehard 5Ds fan, even if the new Synchron cards don't really change the math on that deck hardly at all. I was still looking forward to the product. But what they've done now with those reprints is they've basically made this product the perfect product for any type of player. It's perfect for 5Ds anime fans like me. It has some Edison reprints in there. It has competitive staple reprints, and it's a perfect product for beginners. Because if you are starting out in the game trying to get into competitive and you need play sets of staples, there you go. You just buy this product and you have almost every good hand trap staple, etc., that you would ever ask for, and gives you a nice building block of what to go off of. Not to mention, the Blackwing deck that's included in there is pretty much a constructed quality Blackwing deck. They have 3 copies of all of the best Blackwings in there, including some of the extra deck cards are there in multiples. You can literally take one of these products and have a viable modern Blackwing deck out of the box, which is just crazy to me. And not to mention the implications on common charity format, because I may make a separate video about this, I may not, but common charity format has got to be in shambles right now, because you're getting all 3 Mulch Armies plus Cross-Out Designator plus Droplet at common for the first time, and not to mention the entire Blackwing core from Darkwing Blast is now viable at common as well, including Full Armor Master and Blackwing Assault Dragon at common. And so the Blackwing deck will probably be playable in common charity if I had to guess, but it might not be like the best deck or anything. But yeah, just introducing the Mulch Armies to common charity seems like a disaster, because it's like, well, now what do we do? Like, this format is barely any different than standard. But to talk about a format that is very different than standard, let's talk about Genesys. So one thing I would like to say up front is, I recall saying in the first video that I did about this that some of the point values seemed arbitrary, and I'd like to walk back that comment now, retract that if I can, because I now no longer think that. Now, after studying the list quite a bit more, I do feel like the point values are actually very particular. The point values are, there is a specific design mythos around why cards are pointed the way they are. And of course, I've studied, this list quite a bit while as I've been making decks for this. Unfortunately, I have made quite a few decks. I spent like all day on Sunday making decks for this, and I was punished severely for doing that, because this points update came, and this points update is significant. It is way, 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 way more changes than I was anticipating. So I was pretty salty when this first dropped, if I'm being honest, because after like thinking about it, most of the changes in here I'm pretty positive about. I think they made the right call with like 95% of the changes in here, and they're objectively correct. But there are some things in here that I genuinely do not appreciate, and so I'm a little bit mixed on this overall. So one thing I love about this update is there's not a whole lot of fluff text in here that you can just go read the article to explain the changes, but they have all the changes categorized. And these categories are explained in the previous update that explains what they changed. So this whole category right here is all cards that either enable like an FTK or some kind of unfun alt win condition. And so, hell, fuck all these cards. I don't care about any of this. This is a really good choice that they made here, especially the Banquet of Millions, DD Dynamite stuff right here. And then last turn, the only ones of this that I care about is the Tax Dragons, particularly these two. And it's still negligible. I will still find points for these, find room for these in the decks that they're in, but I'll have to change up the non-engine a little bit, which kind of sucks. Funny enough, watching Joshua Schmidt's video, he did not realize what this interaction was about right here. He thought, oh, Beals is just a monster that's hard to out. No, that's not what this is about at all. It's an FTK enabler. If you can put Beals on your opponent's side of the field and then activate an effect at all, it triggers the Tax Dragons infinitely until your opponent's burned to death. So this category right here, I'm mostly positive about this. It seems like they're trying to make back row removal cheaper. Baron to 80 instead of 85 is negligible. Most of these I don't think are that meaningful. Premature Burial to 7 is kind of scary because of the Doom Z deck, and a lot of decks may consider playing this. But the one on this list that actually really annoys me is Nibiru, and we'll come back to it, but most people are actually in agreement with me on this. I was quite surprised. I thought I was going to be in the minority opinion on this. But I feel like by lowering the point value of Nibiru, it punishes decks that are not extremely versatile, which further pushes the power into the most modern decks in the format. And I think that's contradictory to their design philosophy. Older decks that don't have a built-in Nibiru plant are going to get super punished by this because most people will probably be changing their hand trap lineup to be exactly Droll and Nibiru. I think I will be as well. And we'll come back to this when we talk about the cards they did not hit. This category I'm pretty much fine with. Upstart to 3 I think is stupid because no one's going to play this. Upstart is a 3 in the current TCG, and nobody plays it because it procs Droll. So nobody wants to play a 37 card deck on the risk of being locked out of their combo because they proc to Droll. Extrav needed points. I definitely agree with this, but I do not agree that Upstart needed points. I think that's stupid because now we don't have any generic draw spells. Upstart was by far the worst of all of those, and you took that away essentially as well. I mean, 3 points people might still find room for, but I don't think anybody's going to play it at 3 points. I do not think it's worth it. Iron Thunder needed points. That's a pretty powerful card. Super Poly increasing in price, I think, is good as well. Super Poly is the best board breaker in the game if you can find room in your extra deck for it. Because as you guys know, it can't be responded to, and so it's pretty much guaranteed to break a board. Whereas like Lightning Storm, Regeki, etc., you can actually interact with. So I'm fine with this going up. I honestly think it should go up more than that. Terratop going up kind of bothers me because the design mythos around like the monster card starters that search, like Stratos, was that they would be at 3, and so they've already kind of changed their mind about that pretty quick. And this is the one that bothers me quite a bit here is Lars. So this might be my least favorite change on the entire list. I get it, but I would have loved for them to have done this with a decrease to Misk. I think Misk should be like 51 because the point of having Misk be high in point value is so you can't play more than 1. But you can't play more than 1 if you have it at 51, so it doesn't matter. Now with Lars being 20, almost every single extra deck boss monster that can do like a negate or something like that is usually put at 20. So Titanic Galaxy, Psychic End Punisher, Shen Shen, Phaedon Dragster, Bestial Dissipator, all of those cards are at 20 points. So putting Lars at 20 points does fit in perfectly with that design sensibility there. But now it is very, very hard to play the Jirac Dinosaur deck with any good non-engine because you are at 95 points with just Lars and Misk, which really sucks. The Mitsurugi cards, get out of here. Nobody wants you in this stupid format. Honestly, I think Habakiri could be 1,000 points, and I would defend that choice. I don't want to see Mitsurugi. I mean, it's dominating the TCG. It's dominating Master Duel. We need to have a format where this deck is not playable, please. So I'm fine with that. So this category right here is all about monsters that cheat other monsters out from the extra deck. And so I think they are deciding on an agreed upon point value for those at 80 points. And they are moving the targets for them to 21. So you can't play both together. Now, they have this sort of the opposite way around with Totally Awesome and Bahamut Shark, where Bahamut Shark is 81 and Toad is 20. But again, Toad fits in. Toad is more generic than some of these extra deck bosses that can do negates. And so Toad is pretty generic, but these other ones are really, really enabled by their support card. And like I said, 20 is the point value they want to go for these extra deck bosses that can negate, like Lars, like I talked about. So Dragoolion can summon Numeron Dragon. We're familiar with that. Crimson Dragon can summon Blazar and Cipher Divine and King Calamity. So we want to make sure all those are adjusted. All this really means all I really care about as far as this part is I will no longer be playing King Calamity in the Red Dragon Archfiend deck, because of the fact that he was 1 point, I could justify playing him and just make him on my turn and in hopes of negating my opponent's established board. I didn't have a line to make him on my opponent's turn, but I had a line to make him on my own turn. So I'm like, whatever, he's 1 point, I might as well put him in there. So I just have to take him out now because he's not worth 21 points if I can't make him on my opponent's turn. But this one really bothers me, so I get it. It falls in line with the other things they said, but I hate that they had to put Utopia Dragonar at 80 because you now can no longer play the Automat Utopia deck is significantly nerfed. Significantly, because the end board you could have before was like Utopic Draco Future and this guy, and he would turbo out like the Heraldry Crest Dark Matter guy from Alliance Insight or something like that, and you'd have like a really, really, really powerful end board, but it wasn't like dominating everything. It wasn't Vanquish Soul. So like, why did they feel the need to hit this so hard? And again, it sucks because they're moving the goalpost with these starters. So you'll see later they put Dodo Warrior from 0 to 7, and so you literally cannot play Utopia Dragonar, Utopic Future Dragon, and any copies of Dodo Warrior in the same deck. So you're probably going to max out on, if you're playing pure Automat Utopia, you're probably going to max out on Dodo Warrior and Utopic Future Dragon and just cut Utopia Dragonar and its targets altogether. But I've played this. It's not as good as being able to, make one rank 4, search the rank up magic. The rank up magic spell is also 1 point, so you can't rank up Utopia into Dragonar with the rank up magic and still have something to summon off of it. So this really hurts a lot. I don't know what I'm going to do about the Utopia deck then. This is a good category right here. They're basically just addressing a bunch of other ignorant floodgates or cards that they didn't foresee being a problem, I guess. So like the Seas right here are a problem when you don't have link summoning, and so they had to add points to those, but some people are saying they should add more points. And then this category right here is specifically addressing the meta, so to speak. These are addressing the decks that did really well. So we're murdering Vanquish Soul. I'm completely fine with that. I'd be happy if I never saw that deck again because it's been all over Standard for a while. K9, get those cards out of here. Um, they are preventing you from being able to do, again, the last turn Dynamorphia by making the Dynamorphia cards points. The generator cards have some points, which I think is exactly correct. The generator deck should not be able to make VFD, and so you now can no longer play VFD and the generator cards in the same deck. Um, the thing that bothers me about this is Odeon, the Tombkeeper deck. This is the only card they hit. They added 5 points to this. Archmage, this is the only card they hit. And you will notice there is not a single Radiant Typhoon hit on this entire list. So they are being way too soft on cards printed this year. And to me, that just paints a bleak picture of we don't want to hit cards that can sell product. And so it gives me the fear that changes on this list will unfortunately be more based around selling product than they will be about balance. And that really drives me crazy. And so again, we go through some of these other changes here. Enter Blotnir and Trishula going to 13. I guess they want 13 to be the point value for extra deck monsters that can hand rip, which is very specific. Foxy Toon should have points. The Punk Engine should not be completely free, so I'm fine with that. And then Totem Bird and Cicada King are kind of the same card in a way. They're rank 3s that can do a not an Omni Negate, but a Negate. And so addressing these makes sense. And then RDA Abyss to 20. Again, he is a monster negate, so I hate it, but I'm fine with it. I'm just going to have to reduce my extra deck to playing one copy in my RDA deck, so it's fine. But the problem I have with the fact that they did not hit Archmage, Radiant Typhoon, or the Tombkeeper deck very hard. So specifically against Archmage, this is the scenario you run into. You're playing a deck that has either a lot of points in its engine, like Fire King, or like the Jurak Fire King deck, or even just a pure like Jurak Dino deck. Really very interesting, powerful strategies. And you build a board, you go crazy, everything, and your opponent just super polys your whole board away, and then plays their strategy perfectly, and kills you or sets up their turn 1 board on turn 2, so that on turn 3 they'll crack back and kill you, kind of thing, and or turn 4, whatever it is, I guess. Because the thing with the Archmage deck is like it's a very competent modern strategy that has layered forms of interaction. They have the field spell offers protection to the boss monsters. The monsters do different things. There is a trap that they search. There's a quick play spell they search. They have an in-archetype searchable forbidden droplet that they just get to activate as part of their end board. It's a very, very powerful deck. It should not also be allowed to play Super Poly. That is my thoughts on balancing for this format. But unfortunately it does. Meanwhile, decks from years ago have to put points in cards in their engine. And it's like, let's look at the 6 Samurai deck, for example. If all of the 6 Samurai cards were free except for Gateway was 100, and you could basically build a 6 Samurai exactly to its capacity, its same power as it is in the TCG, minus the Link monster, which is a big deal. It doesn't play as well without that Link monster, or without other Link monsters like Saryuja and generics and stuff like that. So if you had a only Synchro 6 Samurai deck with the newest cards from Rage of the Abyss, only one Gateway because it's at 100 points, everything else is free, that deck is still not as powerful as Archmage. So these two decks are not created equal. This balancing is just completely wrong. Because that 6 Samurai deck hypothetically would not be able to play Super Poly, but this Archmage deck can. And again, Dodo Warrior, this is a really petty thing on my end, but why is the deck that I decided to play in Genesys get stacked with points, and this deck gets their extra deck boss monster gets 5 points? It's stupid. I think that I understand that this is explained in their philosophy, but I just don't agree with it. I think the Archmage deck and the Radiant Typhoon deck should have cards added to their engine for the sake of balancing, because basically what you're resulting in is that the most powerful decks in this format are cards printed this year, and I think that's stupid. Um, I think the Archmage field spell should be like 30 points, and that would really fix the problems I have with that deck a lot. Rant out of the way. This this I find this category actually really really funny, because this is an entire category of branded hits. Um, Whatever. I guess I'm just not building branded in Genesis. A lot of people are saying that you can definitely still play it. You just got to be very careful with these point values. And really, the problem is the Fallen and the Virtuous was going to be a generic piece of removal that all decks would play. So they had to put points on it, or else it would be too powerful. I agree with that. And I also agree with making Masquerade points, because um, some branded decks were just making 3 of this thing, and I do think that that should be disincentivized. Maybe you can play 1 or maybe 2, but it should conflict with your other extra deck choices. So I will defend that. The rest of these, yeah, you just wanted to murder this deck. I don't understand. Um, and then this category right here is things where they were like, I guess they were a little bit disappointed by how little play they got, or that they may have overpointed these cards and decided to bring them down. And this is fine. This does not make me want to play any of these cards on this list right here, except for the ninja cards. Thank you for reducing the points on the ninja cards. I may actually try those. But the searching spells, the Rhoda, the E-Telly, the Tanky, the Fossil Dig, they're still too much. No one's gonna play Rhoda at 35, and it's not because we think that we should be able to play more than one copy, because we're used to being able to only play one Rhoda in the TCG. There's parts of the game's history where we could only play one E-Telly, one Bonfire right now, of course, as well. But it's not that we want to play more than one copy, it's that 35 is such a huge chunk of a lot of decks non-engine. Like, that is more than a playset of Droll. It's more than a playset of Nibiru. Just not worth it. So if anything, but that does change a lot of strategies. A lot of strategies have to adapt, and they can't rely on generic searching tools like this for consistency. And I'm actually okay philosophically with a deck having less consistency than it would have in constructed, because the generic draw cards are restricted behind points and the searching spells are prohibitively expensive. So that's basically my thoughts on the Genesis point list. Like I said, I'm mostly positive about it, but I'm pretty salty about them not adding more points to Archmage and not doing anything about Radiant Typhoon at all. And now I don't really know what to play, because the only deck that I had that felt like it was on the power level of those was the Automat deck, and they butchered that deck. So we'll see what I end up playing. I'm really trying to maybe one trick the Rose Dragon deck and get really good with that, but I still don't think that deck is going to be very good, because it loses to Nibiru. And so now what you've done is not only have you buffed the power of the already best decks in the... You basically have buffed the power of the already best decks in the format by further punishing these rogue decks that don't play as strong by making Nibiru more accessible. So with the Rose Dragon deck, I'm either going to have to play a line in which I play super low to the ground and make the Genex boss monster so I can negate Nibiru, which is a terrible turn 1 setup, but it's a setup that doesn't lose to Nibiru. Or when I play the Red Dragon Archfiend deck, what I can actually do now is I can fit a playset of Crossout Designator as well as Droll and Nibiru in the deck. And, that will be my non-engine essentially in that deck, because I was playing like multiple Call by the Grave in that deck. I'm like, I don't care what your non-engine is, I just need to be able to negate hand traps, because once I get to my turn 1 board, you're probably not breaking it, has been my experience with that deck. And then the deck does have recoverability and grind game tools as well, which is nice. So basically what I'm going to be playing in the Red Dragon Archfiend deck is like 3 Crossout Designator, 3 Nibiru, 3 Droll, and the 1 Abyss in the extra deck, and then seeing if I have any extra room for points after that. I doubt I will, because that's what 30, 50, it's 80. So I may be able to play the second Abyss. Um, or something else. We'll see. But yeah, that's basically my thoughts on this. I'm very surprised to see a lot of people agree with me about Nibiru, saying that it's a bad thing. I thought I was going to be in the minority there, but I think a lot of people are very smug about the idea of like, oh, well, your deck simply needs to be able to account for Nibiru, and if you if it's a strategy that loses to Nibiru, then it's a strategy that's bad, or you know what I mean? Like, or how could you possibly not be prepared for Nibiru at this point? Like, people are going to be smug about it, but whatever. I don't really care. So, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time.